I shall persist to join you every night, first in sleep, then in your arms. Everything will be laced with abomination, and you'll be knee-deep in blood.
The movie begins with a young woman named Ellen Hutter having a frightening dream. In her dream, she makes a pact with a powerful and evil demon named Nosferatu. After the pact, the demon, who is also a vampire, has an intimate encounter with her and then chokes her, completing the possession. Suddenly, Ellen wakes up and realizes it was all just a nightmare. Her husband, Thomas, notices her distress and hugs her, reassuring her that everything is fine. The story takes place in 1838 in Germany. Thomas, who is in a rush to meet his boss, Herr Nock, says goodbye to Ellen and heads to work. Ellen, still shaken by her dream, keeps thinking about it. At work, Thomas apologizes to Herr Nock for being late. Herr Nock congratulates him on his recent marriage and then offers him a business deal. He wants Thomas to sell a house in Wisburg to a strange and reclusive man named Count Orlok. Thomas agrees to the deal, hoping it will help him secure a promotion. Later that day, Thomas tells Ellen about the trip he must take to meet Count Orlok. Ellen becomes upset and warns him not to go. She shares a terrifying dream she had before their wedding, where she saw herself marrying death, surrounded by dead boys as guests. Despite her fear, Thomas reassures her that it was just a dream and insists he needs to go for the sake of their future. The next day, Thomas takes Ellen to stay with his wealthy friend, Friedrich Harding, while he is away. He comforts her again, saying she has nothing to fear. That night, Ellen has another nightmare, where Nosferatu strengthens the pact she made with him. The following morning, before Thomas leaves, Ellen gives him her necklace. Unbeknownst to him, she had cut a piece of her hair and placed it inside the necklace, fulfilling one of Nosferatu's requirements. After a long journey, Thomas arrives in Transylvania. The locals welcome him warmly at first, but their behavior soon turns strange, and they start laughing in an eerie way. The village chief scolds them for their actions, but warns Thomas about associating with Count Orlok. Despite the warning, Thomas bribes the chief, convincing him to let him stay one night. That night, an old woman gives Thomas a cross, telling him he will need it. Later, Thomas witnesses the villagers performing a ritual where they stab a corpse they claim is a vampire. Terrified by what he sees, Thomas goes to bed, but decides to continue his journey the next morning. As Thomas travels to the castle, a mysterious carriage appears out of nowhere. Although no one is driving it, he bravely gets inside. The carriage takes him to Count Orlok's mansion, with wolves running alongside it. Thomas finally arrives at Count Orlok's castle, where he is greeted by the frightening and impatient Count. Orlok comments on how late Thomas is and insists they dine together to finalize the house purchase quickly. During the meal, Orlok offers Thomas some wine. When Thomas asks about the strange things he had heard from the villagers, Orlok dismisses them as mere superstitions. As Thomas eats, he accidentally cuts his thumb, causing it to bleed. Orlok, drawn to the scent of blood, begins acting strangely. Thomas senses something is very wrong, but it is too late. Orlok reveals his true nature and attacks him. Meanwhile, back home, Ellen tries to warn her friend Anna about a looming danger, but Anna dismisses her concerns, thinking Ellen is imagining things. Thomas, now unconscious, has a strange dream. During this time, Orlok forces him to sign a mysterious document written in a strange, occult language. Orlok also takes Thomas's locket, which contains Ellen's hair. Afterward, Orlok pays Thomas with gold coins as part of their deal. When Thomas wakes up, he asks to leave the castle, but Orlok refuses, insisting it is impossible for him to leave now. Thomas soon notices strange bite marks on his chest and realizes Orlok has fed on him. Desperate to escape, Thomas searches the castle, but finds all the doors locked. Eventually, he discovers a dark staircase leading to the basement. There, he finds Orlok sleeping in a coffin. Thomas tries to kill him with an axe, but Orlok wakes up and stops him. Terrified, Thomas runs away. Orlok then uses Ellen's hair to cast a spell. As he performs the ritual, Ellen begins to feel its effects from afar, becoming weak and unwell. Orlok uses his powers to compel Thomas to open a locked door, rendering him unable to resist. Orlok then attacks Thomas again, feeding on him ruthlessly. Afterward, Orlok performs a disturbing act of dominance, further asserting his control over Thomas. Back at Friedrich's house, Ellen's condition worsens. She experiences seizures and strange symptoms, leading Friedrich to call Dr. Wilhelm for help. As the doctor examines her, Ellen begins to moan as if she is in a trance. Dr. Wilhelm sedates her, but her condition continues to deteriorate. He eventually suggests transferring her to his mentor, Albin Eberhart von Franz, a scientist in Switzerland known for his expertise in the occult. Meanwhile, Thomas manages to escape the castle by jumping out of a window, but he falls into a river. A nun later finds him unconscious by the riverside and brings him to a nearby church. She prays for him, and eventually Thomas regains consciousness. Back at Friedrich's house, Ellen's seizures become more severe, and Dr. Wilhelm struggles to help her. He warns that the devil's presence is near, adding to the growing tension. As Thomas recovers in the church, he realizes the danger isn't over yet. The nuns urge Thomas to stay and recover, but he refuses, insisting he needs to return to Wisburg to protect his wife, Ellen. Meanwhile, Count Orlok begins his journey to Wisburg, carrying a crate filled with grave dirt and plague-infested rats. Dr. Wilhelm and Friedrich arrive at Professor Albin's home in Switzerland. Albin welcomes them warmly and listens as Wilhelm explains Ellen's worsening condition. After examining her case, Albin discovers that Ellen is under the spell of Nosferatu, a demonic, plague-spreading vampire. Albin tries to treat Ellen and challenges the entity to speak. In response, Ellen becomes possessed, and Orlok speaks through her. She screams for help, losing control completely. Albin tells Friedrich that Ellen is cursed by a demon, but Wilhelm dismisses it as delusion. Friedrich believes Ellen's symptoms are caused by anxiety over Thomas's absence. Albin insists he needs to study the demon further and asks Anna to keep a close watch on Ellen, warning her to call if anything unusual happens. Thomas returned to Wisburg and told Ellen she had been right about her dreams, but soon after, he fainted. At the same time, guards told Friedrich about a shipwreck. They showed him a strange ship that had brought the plague to Wisburg. This was Orlok's ship. Orlok went to his new home and met his servant, Nock. Nock bowed to him, and Orlok promised to spread fear and despair across the land. Ellen stayed by Thomas's side as he became very sick. Anna visited Ellen and apologized for the trouble she had caused. Meanwhile, Dr. Wilhelm and Albin studied a body found on Orlok's ship. They discovered that the rats were not normal. They were evil. Albin said they needed to find Nock right away, but Nock had already escaped. Orlok began chanting a spell to spread darkness and despair. Thomas had a vision of Orlok and woke up scared. Meanwhile, Anna went downstairs and was shocked to see Ellen acting strangely. Ellen begged Anna to stay the night with her, and Anna agreed. At Albin's office, he shared his research about the vampire plague. That night, Ellen dreamed of Orlok. He tried to trick her, saying Thomas had traded her for gold and signed divorce papers. Ellen did not believe him. Angry, Orlok threatened to kill Thomas if Ellen disobeyed him. When Ellen woke up, Orlok's power had already spread. His rats attacked Anna, leaving Ellen horrified. The plague spread quickly, and Wisburg was put under quarantine. Anna, now sick, showed signs of the plague. Ellen screamed in despair at the chaos. Friedrich stayed with Ellen to comfort her, but later suggested she and Thomas leave the city. He thought they might be spreading the disease. Ellen became upset and angry at his accusation. Meanwhile, Albin found a strange symbol in Nock's office. It warned of Nosferatu's arrival. Ellen and Thomas returned home. Thomas begged Ellen to leave the city with him, but she refused, saying it was too late. Ellen admitted she had summoned the demon when she was young and had been connected to him ever since. She accused Thomas of caring more about money than their safety. She reminded him of the document he signed for Orlok. They argued until Ellen started shaking and became possessed by Nosferatu. Thomas realized what was happening and tried to get help, but Ellen stopped him. While possessed, Ellen demanded Thomas make love to her. Afterward, she returned to normal, but was confused and scared. That night, Orlok killed Friedrich's children to show his power. Heartbroken, Friedrich finally believed Nosferatu was real. Albin came up with a plan to kill the vampire. He explained that Nosferatu could only die if a pure-hearted woman willingly gave her life. Ellen was the only one who could do this. Grieving his family, Friedrich tried to summon Nosferatu using his wife's body. But when the others arrived, they found Friedrich had died from the plague. His body and his wife's were burned to stop the disease from spreading further. The group decided to carry out their plan. Ellen lured Orlok to her room. Meanwhile, the others found a coffin they thought belonged to Orlok. Thomas opened it and stabbed the body inside, but it was Knock, not Orlok. They realized Orlok had tricked them. Thomas rushed back to save Ellen, while Albin destroyed the crypt. At her home, Ellen waited for Orlok in her wedding dress. She recited her vows as he did, fully giving herself to him. She let him feed on her, sharing a dark and terrible intimacy. By morning, Orlok grew weaker and realized Ellen's sacrifice was destroying him. He turned into a lifeless corpse and died in agony. Ellen held him as he faded away. Thomas arrived to find Ellen weak and dying. She held his hand as she passed away, having ended the plague and destroyed Nosferatu forever. The end. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos. Watch full movie for best experience.